Hello, everyone. Forgive my voice. The whole family's been sick with COVID and we're finally recovering, so I might not be 100% fresh, but we'll get into this anyway. Because I was having a discussion on X about nuclear power, and I swear, the anti-nuclear people, this is like becoming a religion. You know, the watermelon religion of the renewables people who are just, oh, we got to do everything possible to reduce our carbon output because of global warming, except nuclear. It's just dumb. So I, of course, have been going with what actual nuclear experts have said. You know, nuclear physicists, nuclear engineers, nuclear chemists, people with reactor experience, and also grid operators. And then they push me over to these environmentalist websites, like Clean Technica here. And so the big problem is renewables cannot provide a baseload. There's just no way. Sun doesn't shine all the time, wind doesn't blow all the time. You don't get a baseload that way. What do? You use nuclear as a baseload. Then you can add all the renewables you want on top of that. But you've got to have a reliable grid. Well, turns out they're actually denying this. Yeah. This is like their creationism. This is like their flat earth. It's baseload denialism, I guess, is a thing now. Because they know there's no way that solar and wind can provide a baseload. So they have to deny that baseload is even a thing that we need. And I mean, it would be one thing if they could actually say how grid ops could manage without it. But they deny that it's even necessary. And so that's what this Clean Technica site is doing. From what I can tell, yeah, it's basically a watermelon propaganda site. Because I looked at this guy, George Harvey. I mean, I'll be fair, I don't really know how much of the site he represents. But the only thing I can see of him is he's a writer for this website. Even on this website, they don't provide a CV or anything of him. There's no indication that he has any sort of expertise in any relevant field or any reason to believe that he knows what he's talking about. Now, let's get into this baseload power doesn't make sense anymore. And he starts out saying, I am pretty sure I will be called names for this. Ho 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 ho! Yeah. Yeah. You will. And you'll deserve it. You'll deserve every single one of them. Today, despite all the reasons to know better, many people still insist that we need baseload power. Gee, wonder where we get that idea from. I see this every day in the news. I think it is sheer folly, but we should understand what people want and why it is folly to want it. Let me start with a statement that I'm sure some people will comment on, if for no other reason, just to say that I must be mad. Yeah, I think they probably will. I think a lot of people are going to say this. Check this out. It is not possible to run an electric grid on just baseload power. Well, no one says it is, ya turkey! Oh, God. You know what? I don't normally do this because it's not a Lord Killian video, but if anyone deserves this, it's you. 1, 2, 3, 4. Mr. Strawman, give me a break. All right, so I guess he's going to educate all the grid ops out there, and let's see what amazing arguments he has. The base load is the minimum load that the grid will have during some period of time. And of course, he cites Wikipedia. As if actual grid ops aren't going to know what's in Wikipedia. Yeah, again, no one is denying that. That's what it is. That's what it is. Please note the word minimum. Okay, yeah, that's the concept of a baseload. We all get the concept. There is a reason the baseload was important. It was to save money. No, it was to provide reliability, and is to provide reliability for the grid. It seems that worked decades back, but my guess is that today it will only work where people insist on running an archaic generating plant. Notice that he doesn't want to say it out loud. But yeah, he's talking about nuclear. And he's calling nuclear archaic. A baseload power plant is designed to provide the base load. Wow, what wonderful insight. The minimum demand that the grid will have during a period of time. The period for a plant's design might be its lifetime, which would mean the base load is the expected minimum to be placed on it during a period of 40 or 50 years. So yeah, he's definitely talking about nuclear, because nothing else has a lifespan of 40 or 50 years. Some nuclear plants have had their licenses extended to 80 years. And pretty soon, after too many years, they might be able to get an extension to 100 years. This stuff is just reliable. It works. And think about how cheap it gets when you can just keep running an existing nuclear power plant instead of having to build a new plant of some kind. Designing a plant to do this saved money because the plant did not have to have all of the features necessary to match the changes of demand as it goes through its swings, which it does all the time. Yeah. Right. No one's saying otherwise.
Just shut your pie hole, for goodness sake.
So the reason for baseload power is this: baseload power was designed to be cheap without regard for changing grid demand. It was designed to make the grid stable, so you don't have rolling blackouts. So you make sure you've got enough power to keep things going. And yes, you have to go on top of that with other forms of power. No one says otherwise. No one says that baseload is the only one you need. You see what these people do? You see how they just lie to you? And how easily they do it? And how smugly and arrogantly they do it? We should bear in mind that addressing the baseload was an approach of the early 20th century. Oh, it's old, so it must be bad. The baseload power plant saved money by producing the same amount of electricity constantly. No, it made things reliable by producing the same amount of electricity constantly, regardless of demand. Its goal was to run flat out at 100% of capacity, day in and day out, for as much of its lifetime as it could. That design meant that baseload power could not address changes in demand, which have always gone up and down constantly. Again, no one says it does.
Are you just stupid, or have you been drinking? No one is convinced by this. What were you thinking?
All right, I'll give you an example that's right here. Not quite right here. About that way. I think like 1.7 miles. There's a nuke plant. It's got 2 reactors. And those 2 reactors provide over 2 gigawatts of power. And they provide the baseload. And they just do it. And they just keep doing it. And they're doing it. Right next to it is a hydroelectric dam. I believe it maxes out at 350 megawatts, if I remember correctly. But it varies. It's really easy to vary the output of a hydroelectric dam. And so that's what it does. It's called load following. It goes up as demand increases, down as demand decreases. So you have the baseload nuclear, and then the hydroelectric providing the variability you need. And so it says with baseload power only supplying the minimum load, other types of generating capacity had to be turned on and off, ramped up and down constantly. Yeah, that's what you see. You can actually go, there are websites you can go to look at. All this information is public. The grid statistics. What you'll find is nuke plant, doing it. Boom, like that level. The hydro plant, up, down. I don't think it's ever, at least from what I saw, I don't think it ever actually went up to the full 350, but it never went down to 0 either. So it's never been in a case where we've used so little power that they just had to shut off the generation of the dam entirely. So that's good. That means that we've got everything we need. The big trick to running a grid is this: supply must meet demand as precisely as possible. Too little is a problem, but so is too much. Again, no one denies this.
Straw man, I can't stand it when you spew it over and over again.
And note the tactic of creationists. When they go against an expert, and they want to make it look like they're smarter than the expert, they'll take their position, state it as their own, and use that to try and make the other side look ignorant. And it's deliberate. That's a deliberate tactic. And of course, baseload power only provides the base load. Why do you think it's called base load? That's the point of it. So addressing the big trick had to be done by other power sources. Yeah. Again, no one is saying that you only need the base load and that you don't need anything else on top of it. No one. No one is saying that at all. Harvey is just a liar. That's all there is to it. But then he says baseload plants can't do that. Baseload plants can't power a grid by themselves because they are inflexible. They really aren't, though. So, like when people talk about nuclear, they might talk about shutting down a nuclear reactor. You can shut down a nuclear reactor in a couple of seconds, but it can take days to get it back up. And there's a lot of reasons for that. The procedures you have to follow, the regulations, all of the things you have to file and everything. Why did it go down and how we're getting it back up and is anything going wrong and so on. But the main reason is because as soon as you shut down a nuclear reactor, you get a buildup of xenon-135. And that is a radioactive isotope of xenon that's called reactor poison. Because if you've got a lot of xenon in your reactor, it's going to gobble up all the neutrons for themselves. So they won't be available for the fissile material. And so it's just not going to work. So you have to wait for the radioactive xenon to go away. Fortunately, its half-life is 9.2 hours. And so, couple, 3 days, it's gone. But what if you're not really shutting it down? What if you're just in a period of unusually low demand? So let's say you're going to take it down to like 90% of what it is. You just put in some of the control rods, put them in part way or whatever, and you're taking your output down to 90% of what it was. You can do that, and you can do that very quickly. How can you get that back up? Well, it depends on how long it's down for. If it's down for, just say, an hour or two, then you can get it back up in 30 minutes. If it has to stay at that lower level for a week, then you're going to have more of the xenon built up. And then it might take you 12 to 24 hours. So it's not that nuclear can't do it. It's just not very efficient and not very quick. You really want something on top of it. Again, no one says otherwise. The plant is making the nuclear base load and then something else providing the load following. Or having some good way of storing it, like in Wyoming where they're building the natrium reactor. The idea is, they'll have this big tank of molten salt. And then the nuclear reactors don't produce electricity, they produce heat. And so what you do is you just keep pumping heat into that molten salt tank. And then on the other end, you've got the normal steam turbines. You just pull out however much heat you need at the time. If you need a lot, you use a lot. And that gives you like the flexibility that you get with a coal plant. Because the thing about coal is you can ramp it up really quickly. You can take it down really quickly, ramp it back up really quickly. No problems. And this will give nuclear that kind of flexibility. Then after it's done, it gets into a cold side. And I say cold side, that's still going to be, a few hundred degrees Celsius. But it's a few hundred degrees on the cold side versus a couple thousand on the hot side. That's a pretty good heat differential. And that's good for storing heat. So there are ways. So he asks, what happens when the grid doesn't really need any power beyond the baseload? Well, what needs to happen? You got the baseload producing the power and everything else is shut down. Demand might go up, which would be okay because it means that other power sources would be turned on. Right, sure. But what if the demand falls below what is supplied by the baseload? Well, it means that plants have to be shut down because they can't respond fast enough to match demand. And since baseload power plants tend to be big, that means almost certainly that some area will suffer a blackout because demand was lower than supply. Are you insane? Are you actually insane? I mean, first of all, as I just described, you don't have to shut down nuclear all the way. You have other options. But there's other things too. This isn't really on the generators. This is on the grid operators. And grid operators have all sorts of ways of dealing with this. If they're getting excess power into the grid than what people are using, they have ways of storing it. They might pump water into a reservoir. And then when the power is needed again, they've just got their own hydroelectric turbine that they just pull it from. Or they might do it with compressed air, or they can export it. Hey, some other grid op somewhere, we've got a surplus of power. They need power. We'll sell them some power. Maybe we sell it to them cheap. This guy has no clue. It's like he thinks that you just plug in your appliances and on the other end of the wire is the nuke plant. That's not how it works. It goes through so many different steps. And grid ops have to deal with like so many different kinds of power. And you've got nuclear power and other sorts of power where you're spinning a turbine. And what rate is that spinning? Wind works that way, but it spins the turbine much slower. So others are spinning too fast, that spins it too slow. And so it's going to bring in all of that electricity and convert it through transformers into what's required for the high tension power lines. Then on the other end of the high tension power lines, you have another transformer that steps it down to the electricity that's sent to our homes. So I don't get, it's like, oh, we've got a little bit of surplus electricity, so we have to shut down all the nuke plants and make everyone have blackouts. What? Just nothing short of insane. This guy is insane. This is a religion. The only way you can be this dumb is with a religion. This is his religion. His watermelon environmentalist religion. That just means he has to do renewables and only renewables, and he can't allow anything else to interfere with that narrative. He can't allow anything else to intrude on his policy of having renewables for everything. Low demand can mean plants that are too big to meet demand precisely might have to be shut down. I just covered why that's insane. And low demand could also mean high costs in the real world. This is a case where the law of supply and demand might just be a little out of touch with reality. Don't say that other people are out of touch with reality and then deny supply and demand. But he's a socialist. That's what it is. Socialists are pretty much the ones nowadays denying supply and demand. Which I don't even know. How is he? I don't even understand how his argument, bogus though it might be, even leads to a conclusion that supply and demand doesn't work. Supply and demand still works. Because there's one other way that they have of doing this, and that's the price mechanism, isn't there? Because if we're looking like we're in a situation where we're going to be producing more power than people demand, what can we do? We can lower the price of electricity. So if at night, not a lot of people are using electricity, lower the price of it. And that means when people are going to be charging their cars, you're going to encourage them to plug it in overnight to charge. And maybe even follow the electric rates. That's called price following. You can do that. Plug in your car and it figures out the cheapest time to charge up your EV. Or whatever it is you're doing. That lower price encourages people to use more electricity during those times of otherwise low demand, and to use less of it during times of peak demand. That's basically what supply and demand is for. Yeah. I don't even know if this guy understands what supply and demand is. For years, I have been really tired of the too often repeated words, the sun doesn't always shine and the wind doesn't always blow. Yeah, I'm sure you are. Because that's the part that you can't deal with. The sun might not always shine in one place, and the wind might not always blow there. Yes, but people who are in that place still need electricity. Yes, the sun is shining on the other side of the world, but that's not doing you much good right now, is it? But baseload power simply cannot supply the all electricity we need for changing loads of the grid. Okay, first of all, bad English. It can't supply all the electricity we need for changing loads on the grid.
How much can a person take? Mr. Strawman, give me a break.
Yeah, again, this is the entire concept. The baseload gives you the reliable baseline. Then you have other things on top, providing the variability that you need. The complaint about sun and wind is that they are variable, but we have an equally valid complaint that baseload power is rigid and inflexible. The word you're looking for is reliable. Reliable. Why do you think it is that in countries like Germany, where they shut down all the nuke plants and went renewables, carbon output went up, whereas in France, where they did a better job at supporting nuclear, carbon output went down? Because when the sun isn't shining and when the wind isn't blowing, you need something to pick up the slack. If that's nuclear, you can do it without carbon. If that's coal or natural gas. And by the way, with the way they set up the statistics, when they do that and run those as backups for solar and wind get the credit for it. It's kind of like if you only work half the time, you have your friend do the other half of the work for you, but you don't pay him, and then you get credit for doing all the work. That's basically what the statistics about renewables are like. But the compelling complaint about baseload power is that while it did save money in the past, it doesn't anymore. Sun and wind are cheaper than this cheap power source. No, they are not. We've been over this. Nuclear is like half the price of solar and wind when you consider the life of the plant and also correct for downtime, which is something else they don't want to do. So nuclear has some downtime, like every 18 to 24 months you got to do the fuel reload, and you have to take things down while you're doing that. So it's not 100% all the time for the life of the plant, but it's up there. Whereas with solar, sun doesn't shine half the time. While the rest of the time it might be cloudy, you're not generating as much, or rainy, you're not generating at all. You need to account for that. And also they kind of try to fudge the lifetime figures. They say the life of a nuclear reactor is 40 years. No, that's just the life of the license. As I said earlier, licenses can and have been extended, maybe upwards as high as 100 years, maybe even beyond that. Whereas with solar and wind, they keep saying 25 years. While that may be the best case scenario, if you look around at what they typically are, solar panels usually last you 15 years, wind turbines do good to last 10. So yeah, they've got the figures all juggled in their favor. And backup battery power is cheaper than the backup plants needed for baseload power. Yeah. I can't believe that with all the problems there are with large-scale battery backups, someone's actually saying do that over nuclear. No. Keep your batteries in your cars and your phones. Don't put them on the grid. That's not what they're for. That's not, put them in your house to help you if there's like a blackout or anything. Or if you got solar cells, they can, if you're producing more than you use, you can store them in the batteries. Well, that's fine. Don't actually use it for power being put on the grid. That's and also, like I said, grid ops have other ways. There's a reason why they generally don't use batteries and are going to use things like pumped water reservoirs or compressed air or things like that, because they work a lot better. And he closes out, I can't believe I am writing this in 2024. You and me both, brother. Come on, people. We need a new paradigm. Act like it. I don't even know what that last part's supposed to mean. And it's interesting that the image he used is of a coal-burning power plant. But like I said, with coal can both provide the baseline and instantly be brought up and down to follow loads and meet demand. So coal has none of the problems he's talking about. We don't like coal because of all the nasty stuff that it puts in the environment. By the way, I think I need to say this again. A properly functioning coal plant with nothing going wrong, puts more nuclear material into the environment than Chernobyl, Fukushima, and 3 Mile Island combined. There is radioactive output with coal plants and various other forms too, because you get those as a side effect of producing photovoltaic cells when you make solar, things like that. All sorts of these have radioactive waste. Nuclear is the only one that's keeping track of it. That's the difference. So yeah, this is what they're doing now. They're denying the need for the baseload because they know that solar and wind can't cover it. But what's going to actually happen when the rubber meets the road? If they actually get what they want, and now everyone's experiencing brownouts like they are in California where they shut down all those nuke plants. Like the problems they had in Germany, having to get sources of natural gas to cover for them in winter because they shut down the nuke plants. Got to get through those cold winters somehow. Yeah, the environmentalists do not have your best interests at heart. And they don't even really care about the planet. They don't. Because otherwise, if they were that concerned about global warming and pollution and waste, they get 100% behind nuclear. And that's just all there is to it. Thank you so very much for watching. Comments for the Comic God, shares for the Share Throne. Please hit like, subscribe, and the bell. And of course, donate.bogosity.tv. Make a one-time donation with PayPal, Venmo, cryptocurrency, or become a regular supporter, Patreon, Subscribestar, and Discord. All sorts of benefits. Please check those out. Thank you so very much for watching. Until next time, stay strong and be free.